Welcome on set, Hamisi. Now, as we talk about issues to do with the development in the country, let's talk about our houses that are being constructed in the country. Just how critical is the engineering profession when it comes to putting up infrastructure?
Thank you. I think that's a very good question to start off. Every country is dependent on its infrastructure. If you look at the budget of a country or countries all over, close to 70% goes into infrastructure. And that, because infrastructure is it is an enabler to other sectors in the country. So it's very important for us to be able to have proper regulations to see that these structures or this infrastructure is built within standards and is sustainable. Because whatever we are building today is not just for us, is also for future generations.
And when you talk about whatever we're building today is for the future generations, we've also experienced instances where buildings, bridges have been brought up, but they keep going down. Who has dropped the ball at that particular point?
First of all, let me start because engineers, most of the time, they're visible. Our visibility increases during structural failures, be it buildings, be it bridges, or any other structure. But there are many other things that engineers do in the country which are never brought to light. I would want to address the issue of collapsing, especially of buildings. Fortunately or unfortunately, during construction, there are many players, key players in the construction industry when a structure is being built. But whenever that structure fails, then it's the engineer who is called out. Why? Because a structure will fail structurally because maybe during the supervision there was no proper follow-up. And why? Especially when I talk about housing industry, you'll find in this space we have like almost 6-7 professions involved. One is the lead architect. Most of the time is the architect who takes the lead. And the function of the architect in a building that are well defined is space management, and also beautification and all that. And then there are other engineers, categories of engineers who are involved, structural, mechanical, civil, depending on the magnitude of the project. And normally, historically, it is the architect who has been being at the forefront in meeting the client and then negotiating the consultant's fee. It's out of the consultant's fee that the architect will decide like how much he's going to pay each of these other engineers. And you see, once your pay is at minimal, it means that you will not have enough time to be able to inspect the site because the works keep on going every day. But if the architect has given you a very minimal fee, so that means that even your personal involvement as an engineer into that project will be minimal, commensurate with the fee. So in our proposal, we are saying that those kind of arrangements need to be reviewed. So that every professional within the industry is entitled to his or her own contribution towards the project. So that it's not just the architect who goes with the bigger pie, while the other professionals, especially the engineers in that project, they are considered to be service engineers, and they are like what your mukono.
And at that point when the building is coming up and
Yes.
there is the issue that you raise on to do with pay, but at the end of the day there's a structure that is coming up, there is a building that is coming up that need to meet code. So if the building does not meet code yet there was an engineer in the picture, at that point aren't we missing the point of making sure that the building or the structure itself meets code?
Yeah, I was very clear that a building will not fail because the engineer misdesigned. Always, our designs are always on point. It only fails during the implementation. Because if you don't have enough time, because of the constraints of cost, that for you to be able to be on that project, then during supervision, the contractor who is building might not adequately adhere to the design code. So whenever we're doing the design are normally adequate, but at the time of implementation, that is where the problem starts. Because if you give me a fee that will not enable me to be able to carry out the works, then the services to do the supervision, then I'll not be having that financial muscle to be able to follow up on all the processes on site. And that partly has been cured when we came up with what is called a scale of fees, that every professional engineer will be paid as per that scale. But still, even with that, once the architect negotiates a project, then it becomes very difficult for you to apply that scale of fee. We need to we'll come up with a regulation to make sure that that scale of fee, as much as it is now an act in our tools of act, then we'll need to have regulations on how to implement that scale of fee within that pool of professionals.
And say a building has come up, there is always the check-off before a building is released, is given the green light to start being used. At that particular point, what is the contribution of the engineer who was involved or the body that comes to do to clear, check off that specific building or structure?
Yeah, normally that happens before a structure is handed, whether it's a road or a building, for you to go do what is called comparison of as-built drawings and the actual building. But as-built drawings will give you the physical dimensions of a building. It will not give you the inputs, especially things to do with reinforcement, the steel reinforcement, the kind of cement that was used on a section, the mixture. It will not give you at a point. You can only compare, do the comparison between what is there and what was actually put down in drawing as the end result. That happens most of the time.
Now we have a body called the Institution of Engineers of Kenya Institute, and that is a body that regulates, or rather has all the engineers inside their pool. What is their work?
First of all, Institution of Engineers of Kenya is a society, is a welfare body. It's not a regulator. Many times people try to, because it's the most visible. Our regulator is EBK. EBK. Yeah, Engineers Board of Kenya. It has its own mandate and is a government arm. Ours, in the Institution of Engineers of Kenya, is a union, kind of, whereby we come together to make sure that we safeguard our welfare within the bigger industry of professionals in Kenya. So basically, its main core mandate is to safeguard the welfare of its members, make sure that their members are well treated at workplaces, make sure there is fairness in terms of pay to these members. So it's an advocacy, institution, not really to regulate engineers. Regulator is there, they know their work, EBK, they're the ones who, for example, if an engineer misconducts himself during his profession, then they're the ones who are supposed to come in and reprimand that engineer. But for us, as an institution of Kenya, Institution of Engineers of Kenya, is to make sure that welfare of our members, be it a graduate engineer, a professional engineer, a consulting engineer, whatever category of engineers that we have, that their welfare is well guarded.
How do you work with the regulator then? How do you make sure that, even as now we were talking about issues to do with pay and the need for that to be reviewed, it being an act and having policies to effect that, how do you have these conversations with the government agencies, the regulator, the board, talk about the Ministry of Infrastructure?
First of all, because EBK on its own might have very minimal contribution in terms of originating their own ideas. Most of the ideas, proposals, will emanate from Institution of Engineers of Kenya, because this is where we are allowed to air our views. And if at that point the leadership of the institution feels there's an issue that engineers have raised and is of importance in terms of regulation, in terms of having it in Act of Parliament, then we normally start that conversation, and then EBK picks up once it's a proposal from us, for it to be able to now to advance it to stages whereby it can now become a regulation or an Act of Parliament. And we work side by side in terms of complementing each other in its mandate.
And now IEK is soon having elections. What exactly does these elections mean to the body that has all these engineers in it? Just how significant is that? And what exactly do these officials say do?
In our institution, we'll be doing the elections on 21st of March. and this is captured in our constitution. Every year we have to do our elections on 21st of March. Right now people are campaigning, and you'd wonder why would people be campaigning to be elected. As I've told you, most of the things to be regulated in the engineering space will always emanate from the engineers voicing their concerns within the IEK, Institution of Engineers of Kenya. So it's very important for us to open this democratic space within that institution. That's why we go for elections, so that members can express their interests to serve in the council, starting from the president, vice presidents, honorary secretary, and all that. It is that body that now will be able, for most of the things that for example, we've had an issue with the transition of engineers, transition from graduate to professional engineer. I know you might have met so many people outside here who graduated the last 2-3 years, and they tell they're engineers, but in real sense, they are not yet really certified engineers. So we've been having that slow transition from you being a graduate engineer to a professional engineer. And one of the things that engineers came up with, especially through Institution of Engineers of Kenya, was to form what we call Kenya Engineering School, whereby just like the law school, who have an advantage is immediately after undergraduate, they're able to join the school and become advocates of the High Court. We also, as engineers, through our movement, IEK, we're able to push EBK to establish that particular school, so that most of our graduate engineers can go through it very fast, get accredited, and then once you get accredited, then you're able to earn a living, a decent living. That's why we say that within that election, then once the officials are elected, then they should ensure that at least, not all, but most of the members get the economic right, which is guaranteed under, once you've registered, then there is decent pay for you as an engineer.
Now, engineers in this country, there are not many, but we also suffer something called a brain drain, where someone goes through the process, graduates, but goes out of the country to work out there. As an institution, I know you want to become the vice chairperson of IEK.
Yes.
How do you solve that problem? Not only for Kenyans, but I mean, yes, especially for Kenyans, so that we have engineers who can work for us here.
Truly, yeah, though you've said engineers are few, if you compare the ratio of every engineer to the citizenry, then the ratio is very huge in terms of disparity. But this has been occasioned by just what I've told you. Once you graduate as a graduate engineer, it becomes very difficult for you because for you now to be a accredited engineer, you must have gained some experience as a graduate engineer. And you'll find that most of these graduate engineers, because they can't get work here locally, they opt to go outside the country to find some meaningful engagement there. So as a proposal, we are saying that there should be 100% transition. Once you graduate, then you are certain that you'll become an engineer. And this can only be done through what you're calling Kenya School of Engineering. That once you graduate, you're guaranteed to join the school, and it will be a government institution, whereby after 3 years or so, now become an engineer, then you earn a decent living. Most of the graduate engineers will be paid very peanuts, because by the fact that they're not registered as professional engineers, then they'll get peanuts, and then most of them will feel disfranchised after finishing the 5-year course. Then they'll opt to go outside and look for employment, whereby perhaps the requirements of registration are not as stringent as in our country.
Hamisi, if you become the vice chairperson, I mean, what are you bringing to the table? Everyone wants to know that. What are you really bringing to the table in a minute?
In a minute is, I want to open up the democratic space within our institution. For so long, our institution has behaved like a regulator, whereby members are punished for just talking out their mind, whereby members are even taken to court. If by any chance, if you ever talked about something that is so pressing with the engineers, some of the officials will take you to court for having commented on something like that. So mine is to bring in inclusivity. We want to make amendments to Constitution to reflect our current needs as an institution. Just before I finish, for example, the graduate engineers who are within IK, they're not allowed to vote. They're not allowed to be voted for. And yet they pay subscription every year. So these are some of the things that we want to amend. If you look also at the same within the governance structure of IQ, there's a body called Eminent Engineers Forum. Institution like engineers is a simple institution. I don't see why, if I become the president, then you, the outgoing president, will be sitting around for the 2 years trying to take me through. So we are saying that there are major fundamental changes that we are going to do to the constitution, which will increase or expand the democratic space within our fraternity.
IEK. Yes. That is Engineer Butichi Hamisi, as he talks about engineers in the country and what must be done to make sure that they stay here and that their rights are